The United States has the world's most powerful military. Iran does not. On paper, this should be one of the easiest rivalries in modern history. So why, after decades of sanctions, covert operations, military strikes, and overwhelming military power, does Washington still struggle to achieve its biggest goal in Iran? The answer is not hidden inside a missile bunker, a nuclear facility, or a proxy militia. Those are only the final pieces of a story that began more than 200 years ago. And until you understand that story, you cannot understand why every new crisis between the United States and Iran follows the same path. If you enjoy documentaries that go beyond the headlines and explain the real history behind today's biggest conflicts, subscribe now. Every week, we break down the events shaping our world with facts, history, and clear geopolitical analysis. You might think this is a story about religion, ideology, or today's headlines. It is not. This is the story of a nation that spent generations learning how foreign powers tried to control it, and how every attempt to shape Iran from the outside changed the country in ways no one expected. Time after time, powerful nations believed they had finally solved the Iran problem. Instead, they helped build a system designed to survive them. This is not about taking sides. It is about understanding why history keeps repeating itself, and why the real battlefield was never just military. Long before Iran became the center of today's headlines, it was known as Persia, one of the greatest civilizations in history. In 550 BC, Cyrus the Great founded the Achaemenid Empire, creating one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever seen. At its height, Persia stretched from the Indus Valley in the east to Egypt in the west, linking Asia, Africa, and Europe through trade, culture, and military power. Later empires, including the Parthian Empire from 247 BC to AD 224, and the Sasanian Empire from AD 224 to 651, continued to shape the Middle East for centuries, standing as rivals to the Roman and later the Byzantine empires. Persia was more than a powerful state. It became a center of learning, engineering, and commerce. Its roads connected continents. Its cities attracted merchants from across the known world. For hundreds of years, Persia helped shape the balance of power across the Middle East instead of reacting to it. But history rarely rewards past greatness. After centuries of invasions, internal struggles, and changing dynasties, Persia entered the 19th century in a much weaker position. In 1796, the Qajar dynasty took power over a country that still carried the memory of an empire but no longer possessed its strength. Its military had fallen behind Europe's rising powers, its economy struggled to keep pace, and its government found it increasingly difficult to defend its borders. This was the turning point. The world's strongest empires no longer looked at Persia as a rival they had to defeat. They looked at it as a strategic crossroads they could not afford to ignore. And once Persia became more valuable for its location than for its power, the struggle over its future truly began. But Persia's greatest challenge was no longer the strength of its army. It was the position of its map. By the early 1800s, two of the world's most powerful empires were expanding toward the same region, each driven by a different strategic goal. To the north, the Russian Empire was moving through the Caucasus after defeating Persia in the Russo-Persian Wars of 1804 to 1813 and 1826 to 1828. Those victories forced Persia to sign the Treaty of Gulistan in 1813 and the Treaty of Turkmenchai in 1828, surrendering large territories in what are now Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. For Russia, this was not just about land. It was about securing influence in the Caucasus and expanding toward warm water access that could strengthen its trade and military power. At the same time, the British Empire was looking from the south. Its greatest concern was protecting British India, the wealthiest part of its empire. British leaders feared that continued Russian expansion could threaten the routes leading to India through Central Asia and the Persian Gulf. Keeping Persia independent, but within Britain's sphere of influence, became a key part of its strategy. Historians later called this rivalry the Great Game, a 19th century contest fought with diplomacy, intelligence, trade, and military pressure rather than one decisive battle. Persia found itself standing between two global empires, each determined to prevent the other from gaining the advantage. From that moment, Persia's greatest asset became its greatest burden. It was never too weak to matter. It was simply too important to be left alone. But that's where the competition took an unexpected turn. By the late 19th century, the British Empire and the Russian Empire had discovered something more effective than military conquest. They did not need to occupy Persia. They only needed to influence the systems that kept the country running. The first major sign came in 1872, when Shah Nasser al-Din Qajar granted the Reuter concession to British businessman Baron Julius de Ruyter. The agreement gave him extraordinary rights over railways, mines, forests, canals, and other major development projects. Although strong opposition later forced much of the concession to be cancelled, it revealed a new strategy. These were not just businesses. They were the financial and communication networks that allowed a state to function. Money earned inside Persia increasingly flowed to foreign investors, while many of the country's key decisions depended on outside capital and expertise. The struggle for Persia was no longer about capturing cities. It was about shaping the institutions that controlled trade, finance, and government. But every system has a breaking point. And the first challenge to this new model of foreign influence would come not from an army or a king, but from ordinary Persians united behind a single cause. But the system of foreign concessions had created a problem that neither the Qajar dynasty nor the great empires expected. For the first time, merchants, religious leaders, and ordinary people began to see that they were all losing control over the same country. In March 1890, Shah Nasser al-Din Qajar granted British businessman Major Gerald F. Talbot exclusive rights over Persia's entire tobacco industry for 50 years. Tobacco was one of the country's most valuable businesses. It supported thousands of farmers, traders, and shop owners across Persia. To many Iranians, this was not simply another commercial agreement. It was a warning that foreign companies could now control the livelihoods of ordinary families. The response spread faster than anyone expected. Bazaar merchants closed their shops. Farmers refused to sell their crops. Religious leaders joined the movement. Then, Grand Ayatollah Mirza Hassan Shirazi, the highest Shia religious authority of his time, issued a historic religious ruling, calling on people to stop using tobacco until the concession was cancelled. The boycott quickly spread from Tehran to Tabriz, Isfahan, and Shiraz. Even members of the royal court reportedly refused to smoke. By January 1892, the pressure had become impossible to ignore. Shah Nasser al-Din cancelled the concession, handing the people one of the first nationwide political victories in modern Iranian history. The tobacco protest proved something no foreign empire had fully understood before. A united society could challenge foreign influence without firing a single shot. But that lesson also alarmed everyone who benefited from the old system, and the next struggle would move far beyond economic concessions into the fight for political power. But the victory of the tobacco protest changed more than one government decision. It changed what many Persians believed was possible. If a united population could overturn a foreign concession, perhaps it could also build a government that answered to its own people instead of powerful interests. That idea sparked the Persian Constitutional Revolution of 1905 to 1911, one of the first major democratic movements in the modern Middle East. In August 1906, after months of nationwide protests, Shah Mozaffar al-Din Qajar signed a new constitution and approved the creation of the Majlis, Persia's first elected parliament. For the first time, representatives from across the country could debate laws, approve government spending, and place legal limits on the power of the monarchy. It was an ambitious attempt to build a more accountable state. But the new parliament threatened the balance of power that had benefited both the royal court and foreign empires. In June 1908, Shah Muhammad Ali Qajar, backed by the Russian Empire's Persian Cossack Brigade under Colonel Vladimir Lyakov, ordered artillery to bombard the Majlis building in Tehran. The parliament was dissolved, many constitutional leaders were arrested, and some were executed, while others escaped into exile. This is the first moment when the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Every serious attempt to strengthen Iran's political independence was met by forces determined to preserve the existing order. But an even greater struggle was approaching. In 1908, a discovery beneath the deserts of southwestern Persia would transform the country from a regional prize into one of the world's most important strategic assets. But that's about to change. Until the early 20th century, Persia's greatest value was its location. In May 1908, that changed forever when British engineer George Reynolds discovered oil at Masjed Soleiman in southwestern Persia. It was the first major commercial oil discovery in the Middle East. Overnight, Persia became more than a strategic crossroads. It became a strategic energy supplier. In 1909, the Anglo-Persian Oil Company was created to develop those oil fields. Just a few years later, Winston Churchill, serving as First Lord of the Admiralty, made a decision that reshaped global strategy. In 1912, he began shifting the Royal Navy from coal to oil, believing faster, longer-range warships would give Britain a decisive military advantage. To secure that fuel, the British government purchased a controlling stake in the company in 1914, only months before World War I began. Although Persia declared its neutrality during the war, its territory became a battlefield for the British Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. Military campaigns, disease, and the Persian famine of 1917 to 1919 devastated the country. Historians continue to debate the exact death toll, but hundreds of thousands, and possibly several million people, were affected by starvation and related hardship. In 1921, Reza Khan seized power and later became Reza Shah Pahlavi in 1925. He built roads, expanded railways, strengthened the military, and modernized state institutions, hoping to rebuild a stronger and more independent Iran. But by then, the rules had already changed. Iran was no longer important because it sat between empires. It had become indispensable because it fueled them. But history was about to reach its defining moment. By the early 1950s, the struggle over Iran was no longer about trade routes, concessions, or even oil alone. It was about one question: who had the final say over Iran's future? In April 1951, Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh became Iran's democratically elected prime minister. Soon after taking office, he nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, arguing that Iran's greatest natural resource should benefit the Iranian people instead of a foreign-owned company. For millions of Iranians, it was the strongest statement of national independence since the Constitutional Revolution. For Britain, it threatened decades of economic and strategic influence. London responded with sanctions, an international boycott of Iranian oil, and legal action, hoping to force Mossadegh to reverse his decision. When those efforts failed, the crisis entered a far more dangerous stage. In August 1953, Britain's MI6 and the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency carried out Operation Ajax, a covert operation designed to remove Mossadegh from power. The plan combined propaganda campaigns, political bribery, organized street protests, and support from key military officers. Within days, the balance shifted. Mossadegh was arrested, and Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi returned to power with stronger authority than ever before. This is the moment the entire story has been building toward. For millions of Iranians, the 1953 coup became lasting proof that democratic change could be reversed whenever it threatened major foreign interests. That memory shaped the political thinking of an entire generation. It did not end in 1953. It grew stronger over the next 26 years, becoming one of the driving forces behind the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the political system that emerged from it. Why America still can't beat Iran. The 1979 Iranian Revolution did not simply replace one government with another. It created a political system built around one central lesson drawn from Iran's modern history: never allow foreign powers to shape the country's future again. After Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi left Iran in January 1979, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and established the Islamic Republic. Under the new constitution, the supreme leader became the highest authority in the state, while the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, created in May 1979, was tasked with protecting the revolution alongside the regular military. Elections continued, but candidates for many of the country's highest offices are vetted under Iran's constitutional system before they can run. Over the next 4 decades, Iran expanded a security strategy built on the lessons of its past. It developed one of the Middle East's largest missile forces, built partnerships with armed groups aligned with its interests across the region, and invested heavily in nuclear technology. Iranian leaders have repeatedly stated that their nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, while the United States, European countries, and the International Atomic Energy Agency have raised concerns at different times about its potential military dimensions. Together, these policies increase the cost and complexity of direct military confrontation. That is why today's confrontation between Washington and Tehran remains so difficult. The United States possesses one of the world's most powerful militaries. It can strike military bases, destroy weapons, target senior commanders, and impose severe economic sanctions. But military superiority alone does not necessarily achieve the political objective of transforming or removing a system that was designed to survive external pressure. In many cases, repeated outside threats have reinforced the Iranian leadership's belief that strong internal security and regional deterrence are essential to the state's survival. At the same time, Iran is not defined only by its government. Millions of Iranians have called for political reform, protested state policies, and faced both economic hardship and political repression. Their hopes and daily lives should not be confused with the decisions made by the state that governs them. And that brings us back to the question we started with. America does not struggle with Iran because Iran is impossible to defeat. America struggles with Iran because more than 2 centuries of foreign rivalry, intervention, and conflict helped shape a political system designed to resist outside control rather than depend on it. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more deep geopolitical analysis where history explains today's headlines, and today's headlines reveal where history may go next.